Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the St. Louis Java Users Group. This is the May 2022 edition. So for those who don't know, the St. Louis Java Users Group is an informal group. Attendance is free. There's no formal membership list. Our normal meeting date is the second Thursday of every month except December, when there is no meeting. There's just too much going on over the holidays for us to organize the meeting in December. Now, normally when we meet in person, you can join us for food and social at 6 p.m. and the presentation will start at 6:30. When we do meet in person, the last place we met was the Object Computing Incorporated, or OCI, training room, and that's located at 12,140 Woodcrest Executive Drive, Suite 310. That's up on the top floor in St. Louis, Missouri. I'd like to introduce the other members of the St. Louis Java Users Group Steering Committee. So from left to right, we have Ted Doyle, Todd Zimmerman, Bruce Allspaw, that's me in the middle, Wei-Chi Gao, and Kathy Zwang. You can reach all of us on the steering committee if you send an email to that address there at the bottom of your screen. That's javasigsc@ociweb.com. So it's Java Special Interest Group Steering Committee is what it really stands for there, at ociweb.com. The St. Louis Java Users Group would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. So I'd like to thank Object Computing Incorporated. They have been with us for, and guess what? This is it's been now 25 years here officially, going back to 1997. Believe it or not, this is our 25th anniversary meeting, and Billy gets to have the honors for 25
nice.
years of this. Yeah. So they are the original sponsor.
Wow. How close are you to, because New York Java SIG is also very old as well. How close you are to? I can't remember offhand how old they are.
I don't know New York. You'd have to ask them. But yeah, we are at 25 now. It started, impressive. I think it was May of 97 when we started. And I thought about trying to see if I could get someone like, his name slips me now. But anyway. The guy who invented Java, who's given the
James Gosling.
Gosling, yes.
Yeah.
I've got his email, but he doesn't answer his email. But maybe someday he'll respond and give us an anniversary talk. Yeah. But I do have his email. We'll see if he responds. But he doesn't give presentations, but he might answer questions. We'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ari Waller from JFrog is here, and we'll be doing a raffle prize from JFrog here in just a moment. And also we have support from Signature Consultants and Adaptive Solutions Group. When we meet in person, they sponsor the food. At the end of this presentation, we will have a raffle, and we will raffle a JetBrains license, actually 2 of them. But if you're watching the recording, I'm sorry, it's too late. You must be present to win those JetBrains licenses. And when we meet in person, we also have some gift cards from Elastic. They are the suppliers of Elasticsearch. Intertech is a training company, and if you go to their website, I think it's intertech.com, they have lots of training videos and so forth. And when we meet in person, they sponsor the famous Screaming Flying Monkeys. They're little dolls that if you throw them up against the wall, they scream, and also some coffee cups and mouse pads and the like. They're a lot of fun. Manning, at the end of this program, will be raffling 2 Manning ebooks. So again, you must be present to win on those. And on occasion, Pearson will sponsor computer books as well when we meet in person. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Announcements. It's probably not too early to mention that the Strange Loop conference is coming up That will be September 22nd through the 24th at Union Station in St. Louis, Missouri. As far as I know, that's going to be an in-person conference, and you can get the details on that from their website at thestrangeloop.com. Right there, and that'll have all the details on that, thestrangeloop.com. But here comes the big one. That's right. You saw it right. After a long hiatus, it's back. Java 1 at 2022, October 16th through the 22nd, and it will be in Las Vegas. So if you want the details there, just go to that website there. And that was the focus of a lot of discussion I heard going around at DevNexus, that Java 1 is coming back. So as far as upcoming presentations go, on June 9th, it will be Help Your Boss Help You by Ken Cousin of Cousin IT Incorporated. Now, this is a very good presentation, and I would encourage people to come to it. This one won a DevNexus Rockstar Award, and it's based on his book by the same name, on how to help your boss help you, how to get the most out of your boss, and how to get that type of interaction going. On July 14, we've got Thriving in the Cloud Beyond the 12 Factors, and this is by Rich Haggerty, and altogether I think we've got 4 different people here that will be in giving that presentation. So it's going to be quite a big IBM presentation if all these 4 people do everything that they've promised to do. That's why it says at all, just to list them all. So if you would like to give a presentation or be on the steering committee or have ideas for presentations, you can, or sponsor the jug, just send an email to that address I gave you before. That's javasigsc@ociweb.com. And if you want to keep up with our presentation schedule, we post those on our Meetup site as those are scheduled. So you can just check into meetup.com/gatewayjug, and as soon as the presentation is scheduled, it'll show up there, and you can go ahead and RSVP for it as soon as it's posted. So with that, those are my announcements. And so before we get to the main presentation, I understand Ari has some announcements that he would like. So I'm going to click Stop Share. So now Ari can take over the screen.
Awesome.
And you can tell us about the great things that are happening at JFrog.
I'll do that. Thanks, Bruce. Really appreciate it. It's really great to see everybody here tonight. Really excited about Billy's talk this evening as well. You mentioned, Bruce, that with all the conferences coming back, well, JFrog has a really exciting conference coming back in person after a couple of years of hiatus there. Our Swamp Up 2022 is taking place on May 25th and 26th in San Diego this month. So we're really excited. If you have any DevOps enthusiasts here, I do have a 40% discount code for the conference that I'm going to drop in the chat in a little while for anybody that would like to come to that. Just really excited. I'll be there. I'll have a chance to meet you in person, and it's really going to be an exciting event with a lot of who's in the DevOps industry. Not to mention that a lot of people that are speaking there in the DevOps space actually happen to be Java champions as well. So there's some good. There's some good crossover there as well. But for those of you who don't know me, my name's Ari Waller, and I am the Meetup event manager for JFrog. Yes, it's a real job title, and I'm very blessed to have it. We're so excited again to be a St. Louis Java user group sponsor. I think we're going on our 3rd year actually in doing this. So it's really exciting, especially in the 25th year, which is really amazing. So congratulations to Bruce and crew for really taking things and making it really great for such a long time. I'll share just a little bit about who we are. JFrog, we're the DevOps software company founded in 2008. Many people in the DevOps community and Java community know us best for our flagship product, Artifactory, which was written in Java. It's considered the gold standard for managing your artifacts and dependencies. We have, specifically for the Meetup community, a free cloud version of our software available to you. If and it's especially made for those in the Java community. It works seamlessly with Maven and Gradle as package managers, and it's a really awesome tool used by many Java developers. So I'll drop that in the chat as well. But what Bruce was mentioning before is we like to bring a little bit of cheer to meetups with a raffle, and I'm going to go ahead and put that on the screen here. Today we are going to give a chance for you to win a Amazon Echo Show. Now, this is not the little 5-incher, okay, which is by the way not a bad little machine. I have a couple of those in the house, but this is the 8-inch version. So this is the big boy, Amazon Echo Show 8. My children fight over it continuously, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a great way to use Alexa. My Ring cameras are connected to it and everything else. So it's really cool if you hadn't had a chance to have one of those in the past. So feel free to enter to win that by using the QR code or the bit.ly link that you see, which I'll also drop in the chat shortly. I wish I could do live drawings, but because of a compliance department and laws and just the internet in general, I can't. But here's what I will do. We do a random drawing within 3 days of the meetup. We contact the winner via email, and once the winner formally accepts the prize, we will share the name of the winner with the entire meetup community. You may even get a congratulations tweet from us at JFrog as well. So just our way of saying, thank you to the technology community, thank you to the Java community, and really thank you to the St. Louis Java community for being such a pillar with everything. Bruce, it's funny, in the beginning you were talking about how they had to push you to be an MC, but I got to tell you, you're really a natural. You really you've got this thing down, and I've learned a lot just from listening to you as well. Just do an exceptional job at bringing talent in to bring excellent content to the meetup community. And I know it's not just you. I know you work with an amazing committee as well, as you mentioned before. But thanks for being the face of that and making that happen. It's a real honor and a privilege to be part of your community.
Well, thank you very much, Ari. So I guess now we're ready for the main presentation that everybody's been coming from. So if you'll stop sharing your screen, Ari, then Billy should be able to share his. It's only one can do it. Oh, cool. It looks good.
It looks good.
So yeah, tell us about KCDC.
Yes.
And all of that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Take it away.
Yeah. So I'll just be really quick, just so we can get into the presentation, which is everyone is here for. But yeah, KCDC is coming back again this year. And as you can see, it'll be August 8th through 10th, which is actually a Monday through Wednesday. So the main conference will be Monday and Tuesday, and then the workshops will be on Wednesday then. And we'll have both half-day workshops that are 4 hours long and full-day workshops that are 8 hours long. But yeah, KCDC, I mean, I just last year joined the organizing committee, but I kind of joined a great organization. Jeff and John, who've been leading it since the start, have done a great job. And really KCDC, sometimes we get the idea of here living in flyover country here in both Kansas City and St. Louis, but it's really actually become a very well known and well respected conference like the world over. Like, a lot of people from other speakers I speak to are actually really excited and want to come to KCDC. And we obviously lost about half last year. So I think we only had right around 1,000, maybe just under 1,000, but usually we're at 2,000. Hopefully we'll be back at 2,000 again this year. But yeah, we'll be announcing our whole schedule here very soon. So definitely come join us. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. I know this title's a bit different. So when I talked to Bruce about doing this presentation, he had the forward with Java 18 and beyond. But then I also had another presentation called To Java 18 and Beyond, and the names are too similar. And also I feel like this presentation better captures what I'm actually going to be presenting about, which in this case is specifically about Project Amber. And I'm not really going to be talking too much about Loom and Valhalla. I'm actually planning on kind of reworking this presentation in the future to kind of talk about those, because I know there's a lot of interest, but I'm going to be particularly talk about Project Amber. If you don't know quite yet what Project Amber is, that's fine. I'll of course kind of get into that here in the presentation. some important notes. Please, please, please ask questions. If at any point you have something you want me to go deeper on, or you have something else like I didn't get to, you want me to cover, ask questions. I'm here to help share, help everyone learn about kind of what's coming, what has kind of changed in Java here in recent years, and then also what's coming in the, medium short-term to medium-term future. So definitely ask questions, and I'll be able to go even deeper, hopefully, into that in most areas, maybe not necessarily all of them. Also, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, where I spend way too much of my time at Billy Korando, or you can also email me as well. And you can also feel free to DM me in case there's a question or something that I just get into or you thought of later. And you can check out the slides here at my GitHub. And if you leave with an intense desire to know more, we have some great options. We have our dev.java, where we have some tutorials, and then also ways to get connected with the community. That reminds me. So I did reach out to someone from New York Java SIG. They started in 1995, but you're right behind them as far as age. You might be in like top five probably in the US. So New York Java SIG is the oldest, and they started in 1995. And you guys started in 1997. So you're pretty close. You're probably top 10 in the world. So, maybe you should have some recognition for that. Sorry, with that said, also there's Inside Java, our Inside Java podcast. Every Monday, I publish a 1-minute video called Sip of Java on various Java topics. And we also have a YouTube channel. All right. With that said, let's actually start getting into this presentation, because this is why everyone is here. They want to learn a little bit more about Java. So Java has a number of projects that are kind of working towards various goals. Project Amber is one of them. And the goal of Project Amber is to explore and incubate, as on the screen here, small language features in Java to kind of improve developer productivity and improve the developer experience of working with Java. But there's some other JDK projects as well. These are the most active ones of Project Valhalla, Panama, and Loom. There's a few others out there as well, but these are the real main ones that are kind of making the most noise right now. And so like when I first started Amber, I'm like, how did these all get their names? And so like Project Valhalla, that's about improving the memory model map and an introduction of value types. So how it got the name is pretty obvious. Value types are often defined with the word val in languages, and thus that's how we get like Project Valhalla. And then we have Project Panama. Project Panama is about improving the interface between the JVM and native interfaces. The Panama Canal, of course, famously connected both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So thus Project Panama is connecting two metaphorical oceans, the JVM and, the native interfaces. And then we have Loom, improving the handling of threads within Java, specifically the introduction of virtual threads. Of course, looms are used to weave threads together, and that's how we get Project Loom. So when I heard Project Amber, and even the little Duke image used in the OpenJDK for Project Amber has Duke stuck in Amber. And I thought it was a bit of like a tongue-in-cheek reference to how Java seems to be a bit behind other languages when it comes to features, or it seems slow and, whatever, like it was just stuck in the past or something like that. I was also kind of thinking of like Jurassic Park, it's like, okay, a bit nerdy, but it's actually way nerdier than that. So there's this book came out back in the 80s called The Chronicles of Amber. And original passage within it was called Walking the Pattern. And a big core element or core theme of Project Amber, which we'll again explore a bit more detail, is called pattern matching. So that's how that name was developed. And it's just kind of like, oh man, yeah, the OpenJDK people, they are definitely a bunch of nerds here. So even beyond what I am as a nerd. But yeah. So Project Amber, it has already delivered a number of features, and there's a couple I won't really be covering because they just are just not part of the particular area of Project Amber I want to explore. The first is the local variable type inference, var, that was delivered back in JDK 10, and then also text blocks. Both really great features. I particularly like text blocks, but just not quite part of what the story I want to talk about with Project Amber here. But yeah, the agenda, we're going to look at some of the key language changes that have been delivered by Project Amber between Java JDK 11 and JDK 17. They're going to get some of the themes of these language changes, and then we're going to kind of look at some of the future changes that could be delivered by Amber here, again, in the short to medium term. So let's quickly review some of these language changes. The ones we're going to be looking at are the updates to switch, pattern matching for instance of, records, and then sealed classes. Okay, so updates to switch. These were added in Java 14, and the JEP for this is 361. If you're not familiar with what JEP is, JEP means JDK Enhancement Proposal, and whenever there's a somewhat substantial change that's being added to... but that's it. I'll go ahead and continue on. So anyways, where I left off is JEP stands for JDK Enhancement Proposal. And so if you want to go and learn more about these features I'm talking about, because I can only, give a few minutes to each of them, you can go here to OpenJDK Java.net JEPs 0, and this gives you the full JEP list. And then of course, let's see, that one is 361. Let me go ahead and close this window because it's no longer needed. If you put in 361 up here, this will take you to the full layout of the JEP, which gives things like history, motivation, usage, and things like that as well. So what the actual JEP does, or what the change is that, so we're all familiar with the colon syntax for switch. And of course, this still remains completely valid within Java 14, 17, and beyond, because, a big part of Java is also, making sure things remain backwards compatible. But of course, this colon syntax does suffer from a number of issues. It's visually noisy, and it's also potentially very easy to be error prone. So because you have fall through by default for YK, I think you're breathing into your microphone. If you could mute yourself. Thank you. Fall through by default, which that means then that each case you actually have to add this break statement into it. So this adds a lot of visual noise to your code, but also adds a very easy way for bugs to happen. So like, let's say you're working on this switch and you accidentally, are changing or whatever, but you leave out a break statement. Well, all of a sudden you have a bug to where now you're falling through. Again, something that we've all kind of experienced at one point during our careers, which is just a very annoying way to get a bug. So JEP 366, right? Is that what it was? Yeah, 361, sorry. It introduced the new arrow syntax to switch, which then means that if a case is matched, then only the code to the right of the arrow will be executed. So we no longer need to put a break within our case statement, which makes it much less visually noisy, and then also clearer in what it's doing. It's saying like, okay, case match on this, execute this code, and then of course less error prone. You're not going to accidentally forget a break statement and then create a bug like I showed in the previous example. Also with the switch updates is the addition of switch expressions, which means that you can have a yielded value out of a switch like I have in this example. So if I match on a case instead of executing some sort of statement, I can actually have a value be returned back. So in this case, if I match on case 1, then that returns Sunday back, or sets day to the value of Sunday. With this change is you can also, if you have some more complex behavior you need to have done, you can also write things as a block by providing the curly braces. And if you're doing it as a switch expression, then you would also need to end that code block as either with a yield, or also you could do a throw. But yield is it's a reserve, like a context sensitive keyword. So if you have yield and other errors within your code for some reason, this won't result in a compile error because yield is only valid in this specific context. You can also, of course, write a switch expression with the colon syntax. If for some reason you just prefer the colon syntax, you would just write it like this, where you would have yield in each case, in which case you wouldn't need a break because a yield would end the execution for that case. Search expressions must be exhaustive. So in all these previous examples, you'll notice I had a default case. And so, yeah, so the most of the time when you're writing an expression, you'll need a default case. However, if you're doing something with like an enum, and really enum is what the only example currently available within code where you won't need a default case. If I cover all the different values of the enum like it did in this example, then you don't need a default case because you're covering all the different possible execution paths. And of course, you can again also do that with the colon syntax. The next thing I want to cover is pattern matching for instance of. This was added in Java 16, and the JEP for it is 394. So again, another area, at least a few points in our career where we had to do an instance of on something because we had some sort of reference type where it could be one of multiple different types, and we just needed to check it. Maybe it's a value coming in from some sort of external system, or just for whatever reason. So we had to do a, if instance of, whatever we're checking to, and here in this case I have a string, then within the block, then you would just have to set it and then cast it again. And once again, visually noisy. You would also have to do things like checking and make sure it's not null and things like that. So again, also opportunities for introducing bugs in there as well. So what was added is the pattern matching, wherein you can have your check to see like, okay, is actually a string, and then it will be is actually a string, and then that will be then set to this pattern variable. So this is the, of course, first example of pattern matching. And so what pattern matching is, and this is something that will be consistently seen with all of the examples of pattern matching, is you would have a predicate, in this case, checking to see if actually a string is an instance of string. And when that predicate is true, it will then set a pattern variable, which is then flow scoped. And what flow scope is a new concept to Java, at least, or at least now that's something that's much more relevant, where it's a variable that is only in scope wherever the compiler definitely knows that it has been set, or that wherever the predicate is definitely true. So like in this example, now my string is then in scope within the subsequent if block. And to get a better idea of what this looks like is, it's in scope where the compiler knows a pattern variable has been set. So here now my string is of course set where it's been set, and then set in the subsequent if block. But once we get to here, the compiler, or now my string will be out of scope, and so you can use that out here. Here again, if we had just an evaluation, now my string would be only in scope within it, but then out of scope the moment we leave this evaluation statement. And just kind of continue, you can do weird things with it. I wouldn't recommend doing any of these weird things where if I was to put a not in front of this if statement, then it would be in scope within the else of it. If I was to put a not in this and then throw within this following if statement, then it would be available in scope, outside the execution of the if statement, because of course, the only way you could get to this if this was actually then false. So I wouldn't recommend doing any of this. This would be just wouldn't recommend doing any of this, but this would be just a recipe for a bug, but this kind of gives you an idea of what this flow scope actually works like. But most of the time, if we're normal writing code, it's very intuitive, and as we'll see it later on in other examples of pattern matching pattern matching. The next change I want to talk about is records. These were added in Java 16, and their JEP was 395. So the first and most obvious benefit of JEPs is the reduction in verboseness. We can see here in this example, and I know this code is very small, intentionally so, we're imagining like maybe you're doing some sort of ETL, and then maybe you have some sort of small throwaway type where you want to kind of load that value into it. And most of the time in Java code, you would have to define that type in an external file, because even a very simple type, as we can see here in this example, quickly takes dozens of lines to properly implement. If you have your fields, you have a constructor, equals and hash code, this doesn't even have like accesses to it either. It's dozens of lines, so you can't really define that within the body of a method. Otherwise, you just completely lose the meaning of that method. So records, they allow you to define all that within a single line, where you can just do record, and then you get the component names of the record, which then become the fields of the class that record is being defined. But from just the name of it, you kind of know all you need to know about this record. And this is because records have a number of constraints on them. And that's because the goal of them is to be a transparent modeling of data as data. So like I said, just from the definition of the record, you can just know, okay, the name of it, all the fields of it, as well. You don't have to, and this is possible just because a superclass of a record is always going to be Java lang record. And records, of course, then they can't be extended. They're abstract and they're implicitly final. So there can't be any sort of inherited behavior from like some of it. So it's not like you can look at a record and then you'll be like, okay, but I didn't have to look at its parent class to kind of understand maybe all the fields. Every record, you can just look at the definition and be like, okay, these are all the fields within this record. And then also the fields, they're solidly immutable. So if one of these fields, say, for example, was an array list, I could add and remove items from that array list, but I couldn't change the reference to that array list. You also can't declare any instance field. So if within the record, I try to add an additional instance field to it, that wouldn't be allowed, because again, that would kind of violate the ability of just looking at the definition of the record to kind of understand about it. But also kind of with these constraints come also some benefits. Specifically, the compiler will automatically generate accessors, hash code, toString, equals. These will all automatically be generated, but they can be overwritten. But fundamentally, also, a Java record is just a class. The last of the changes that have actually been added that I want to cover is sealed classes, which were added in Java 17 with JEP 409. And sealed classes, what they kind of allow you to do, like at every organization I've been a part of, every time I've been as a developer, there's always certain domain concepts. Like there'll be certain kinds of transaction types, certain kinds of user types, or whatever certain domain concepts. And it's a lot of times you maybe want to kind of at least be a bit hierarchical because there may be some relationship, or just to kind of cut down on code reuse. So you would create a hierarchy. And before, there was no real way to say that, like, hey, these are only like, at our organization, we only have 3 possible real user types, like I have in this example. You would just have to just know that from like kind of looking at the code, but there's no way to prevent like an additional user type from being added. And it's not necessarily, I guess, malicious, it's just a way of defining, just showing that in code. But sealed classes actually allow for that behavior to be codified. And so what sealed classes allow is a class to define who can inherit off of it. In this case, user is a sealed class, and it's saying only guest, customer, and admin can extend directly off of user. And then in this hierarchy then is any class that inherits off a user would then have to declare itself as either a sealed class itself, a final class with guest, or a non-sealed class like with customer. And effectively, a non-sealed class is just a normal class. Anything can extend off of customer. Sealed classes and records can also work together. As I mentioned just a couple of moments ago, records can't extend any other classes, but they can implement interfaces. And so you could do then also then a sealed interface, and then say also that record, these are the only classes that can implement this interface. Also a little bit back here, or actually just directly back, you'll see in this example, I am using the permits clause. Permits is optional. Permits is only used, and it's probably going to be how most people interact with sealed classes, but we have classes that are in separate source files from a sealed class. You would use permits to say these are the classes that can extend off of this class. However, if you were to define these other classes within the same source file as the sealed class, you don't need to put, or actually permits this outright disallowed, as a compiler would then assume that the other classes defined within that same source file are the only valid classes that can extend off of that sealed class. So permits is optional, just something to know, and then could also be potentially useful, particularly maybe an example when maybe using records where you can easily define a record just within a single line. But overall, this is what the roadmaps so far of actually at least delivered are now standard features have been from Project Amber. So JD Java 10 was the first with var. Then we also got local variable syntax for lambdas as well. Search expressions were next in Java 14, text blocks of 15, records in 16. Or actually, that's wrong. That's actually should be 17, and so on. Oh, actually, no, that's 16. That's right. Sealed classes was 17. But anyways, what are the themes? What was kind of the goal? That we're not just kind of randomly adding these features just because they sound cool or fun. One goal is to be more expressive, to be able to more easily look at code and derive the meaning from that code. I think one of the best examples so far, or two of the best examples so far of that, are with switch expressions, or the updates to switch, where it's much easier to cleanly write out a switch where you're saying like, hey, if we match on this this value, then execute this code. So that's a much cleaner. Also with like records, you can much more cleanly define data as well. Also to be safer, compiler warnings, which we'll get a little bit into later. Serialization. Serialization is one of the things that have really kind of plagued Java for a long time. And it's actually one of those things that if you ask any of like the top Java architects like Mark Reinhold, Brian Getz, or Stuart Marks, like they'll say like serialization is like one of the biggest mistakes, or even James Osling, that is like one of the biggest mistakes within Java. But yeah, records actually address a lot of the issues that come from serialization. Also, pattern matching is much more null, or it is null safe. So you can also be less concerned when it comes to nulls. And then, of course, also it's just reducing verbosity and ceremony. And just again, alone, it's not like just about typing, because generally speaking, it's not the amount of typing that we do is taking up the time. It's trying to figure out how we're going to solve an issue, or looking through code to debug it. It's not really like taking the time to actually define a class, versus a record. It's like, oh man, it's like it's taking me like a bunch of time to physically type it out. But it does make it to where it's reducing opportunities for bugs, and then again reducing that visual noise in the code to where you can again much more easily understand the meaning of the code, because it's not like you like looking at a bunch of break statements or something like that. So that is helpful as well. But also, I think Brian Getz really also, in just as he does, kind of explains it very well, which is it's making it easier to program in plain data, because we're also as generally applications get a bit smaller, as monoliths are still obviously very common, and maybe microservices haven't kind of lived up to the hype, so maybe we're not totally going down to the microservice level, but we're still generally, applications are generally smaller now today than they were like 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 25 years ago when St. Louis Java SIG was founded. So we're more often at those boundaries of our program where we're working with data, where we need to transform something from one shape into another. And that's a lot of the goals, is to be able to more easily do that within Java code. So where are we going with the future of Java here? And oh man, okay, yeah, I'm a robot from the future, so we're gonna actually take a little look into the future. I will have to say though, one of the most important thing is the future isn't written, can be changed, as Doc Brown famously said. So a lot of this stuff, don't necessarily just be like, oh, here's the exact syntax I show you on how to do something and expect it to be exactly like that. It can change. I mean, and in fact, it has changed from a first given this presentation. Pattern matching for switch has actually changed in a couple of areas. So both the timelines and when these features can be delivered will change, and then some of the syntax might change around it as well. So pattern matching for Switch, it's currently proposed in its current form for JDK 19. The JEP for is 405, and again, this is preview number 3 for pattern matching for Switch. And so, yeah, it is, again, we can see here pattern matching happening. So we have the predicate here, the matching on a case of, in this case, we're matching on different types. And if it matches on it, then it's going to set it to this pattern variable of I. So if we're matching, if like O is an instance of integer, then it will be set to I. And then to the right of this, the arrow I would be in scope. And then after that, we also have like, the different types are going through. But this doesn't maybe quite show the benefit of it, but this maybe shows a little bit better, particularly when it comes to flow scoping, where we can see how we can continue to use the variable label of I in all of these different cases. But because of flow scoping, in each case, I here would only be in scope to the right of this arrow operator. So we can reuse this variable label, which can be kind of helpful, again, for readability, that we're not going to have to arbitrarily think of like, okay, this is going to be X, this is going to be Y, this is going to be Z. And if you have like a longer case statement, you may have to like start thinking of a bunch of different variable names or something like that, depending upon your needs. You can kind of consistently use the same variable labels, which again, for something like integer here, would make a lot of sense. But the big change with pattern matching or pattern matching for Switch in preview 3 is before, for the guard, we would have guard clauses, and they would be denoted initially by the 2 and signs, the ampersand or the and operator. But I think the issue was like they felt like it lacked a little bit of clarity to show the difference between like the pattern variable or the pattern matching and then the maybe rest of the guard clause. So they added the when clause here that then separates out the guard clause from the rest of the pattern matching, just for a bit more clarity. Also, pattern matching for Switch allows for nullability in your case statements. Whoops. And so we can put a case null on here and then, execute some behavior on that instead of just having a null pointer error or null pointer exception being thrown. Pattern matching for Switch also can read a sealed hierarchy. So like, again, going back to the example before with using the sealed interfaces for user, this switch pattern, or in this switch expression, you'll notice I don't have a default case. And that's because the compiler will realize like, okay, we're switching on user and I'm covering all the different subtypes of user. So I don't need to have a default case in here. And then where this can also become safer is if like, okay, we were later, well, in this case, I just removed one example, but like, let's say later we added like a new type to the sealed hierarchy, then I would get a compiler error because now this expression is no longer exhaustive. So that's a way it can be a little bit safer to kind of prevent new bugs from being added into your application. Records patterns, these are currently also proposed for Java 19 as well, and its JEP is 405. And so what record patterns is it allows for an easier extraction of fields out of a record and also provides better null safety. So here in this example, we have a few different records that are defined. And let's say, from this rectangle, I just want to get to a specific field within it. Like here, I just want to print out the color, which is kind of nested pretty deeply. And so now I have to do like a null check, retrieve a value, do another null check, retrieve another value to print that out. Again, pretty visually noisy. But with pattern matching, I no longer, because pattern matching, like on Instanceof, like you can't match on a pattern or it can't be of that certain type if it's null. So you don't have to worry about nulls in this case. And then I can just also directly reference the fields within that underlying record. So I don't have to then, reference an accessor. So quickly we can just get it down to where we just have a single if statement, and we can get directly to the color of a point and the colored point, and then print out that value. So again, it becomes more expressive. You're just saying like, okay, I'm going to get to this one specific field within this record to do whatever work with it, or these set of fields. So again, you get to be a bit more expressive. You're not getting so much of that visual noise of having to do null checks, reference accessors, and all that. So just to go a little bit farther out then with this, one thing that could be added is array patterns, where similar thing would could happen. We could reference specific elements within an array, and then we also again don't have to worry about null checking, because like let's say if this array it only had one element or or no elements in it at all, then this would just be false, and we wouldn't have to do like a null check to say like, oh, is S2 null, or we wouldn't get a an out of bounds array out of bounds error either. This could also work on two-dimensional arrays, and let's see, I think sorry, that's just probably wrong in there. Also maybe eventually we may also get, or let's see, what was it? Yeah, sorry, I think I just messed up on this slide here. But yeah, also we may get also further enhanced arrays. So if you had like a very large array, the initial array patterns may not work super well with it. But eventually we may be able to kind of more easily traverse, like refer to the specific elements in that array, and not just have to refer to each element and give it to a specific pattern variable name. Also, another thing could be also don't care patterns. So like right now with like record patterns, you would kind of have to give each field within that record a pattern variable name. And of course, for a record that may have like a dozen fields within it, that would be very laborious, especially if you're only needing to reference one or two of those different fields. Don't care patterns, again, this is much further out. Like, we may just say like, okay, I really only care about, the field X within points, and then we may allow it to where you can just do an underscore to indicate that, like, I don't care about these other fields. Or alternatively, you can just maybe refer to a field directly and then not even have to do anything else to reference any of these other fields. Again, if you only care about certain fields within it. Also for each loops, we can make it a little bit easier to where you can also do pattern matching within them. I don't have a super great example for this. I probably should update it to where it's a little bit more clear to show some of the more benefits of it. But again, just more directly referencing it to where you don't have to get so much mechanics of it, pulling fields out of what you're looping over. We have access to all these early access builds. 19, of course, is already available as well as Loom, Panama, and Valhalla. But soon, actually, Loom will start merging in here, as now virtual threads are going to be a preview feature. I think it has successfully been merged with the main line. So we can actually start seeing some of this really cool Loom stuff, which everyone's so interested about. One thing I didn't cover in here that actually is also, I don't know if is it 19, or I think it's still just in submitted status. But this is also part of Project Amber, which is called string templates. And I was only bringing it up just because I'm working on something right now where having string templates would have been really nice. But pretty much what it allows you is, like, we're all kind of familiar, or most people are probably familiar with the, I can even maybe just show the example I am working on. Basically putting together like a little utility method to kind of help me out with some work here. But pretty much it's kind of like, I'm writing a POM file, and here, like, I'm going to, use string formatting to substitute in values for this. But right now with string formatting, I can just reference like, I'm passing in some strings here, but like I can't give like a specific reference to it, which then makes it very hard to work with. I always have to kind of remember when I call string format on this, where exactly which, which variable I'm on within it, which, could very easily become a bug. But with string templates, you can actually give variable names within this, like in this case, like X and Y, to where when you pass it in, you can just say, okay, X is for this, Y is for this, which will make it much easier to work with, which would be particularly beneficial. Like an example I'm kind of showing with text blocks, where you may be actually having a very large body of text you're working with, where you could have many variable references within it. So only just because I just ran into where this would be really nice, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, string templates really would be very beneficial whenever they finally make it into Java as well. That said, yeah, that's the end. Thank you for all the people that should have been here. No thank you to the people that shouldn't have been here for making this evening not as pleasant as it could have been. That said, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Maybe, yeah, I don't know if we want to allow unmuting or not at this point with previous experiences, but if you want to post something in here in chat, I'll be happy to answer questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Billy? Or you could put them in chat if you prefer that way.
Mm-hmm.
Do the new keywords like win and yield and record, are they how are you going to handle? Is that giving a problem porting them forward from earlier versions of Java?
Yeah, so win and yield, they're all context, or win and yield are context sensitive. So if you for some reason have a variable name win or a variable name yield in your code, that's going to be an issue because they would only be keywords, considered keywords within the context of where it would be valid, like in the examples I showed. Record is now a keyword. So if you were using record at some point for a variable name or somewhere like a method name or something in your code, you would get a compiler error for that. But I don't think that it would be something very common for someone to have like a variable named record. And if it is, that's a relatively easy change for the most part. So yeah, you would kind of have to, unfortunately deal with compiler errors in that case. But yeah, for most of them, they're very context sensitive. So that should limit the any issues, kind of like what you're describing.
Billy, can you?
Mhm.
I've got a question.
Yep.
Wasn't there a change in Java because you could always have underscores in variable names? But now if you have a variable name and all it is an underscore, it may be treated differently. I think there was an edge case on that.
Let's see.
I think it depends on the version of Java. It's the more recent versions.
Okay, yeah. This is 17. Let's just see.
As of release 9.
Yeah, as of release 9, yeah, I guess underscore is now a keyword. Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, I remember that when 9 came out, I was like, well, that's interesting. I wonder what they're going to use the underscore for.
Yeah.
And I guess it's going to be for this pattern matching or don't care.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, maybe at some point. Like I said, that this don't care pattern, like this is still very far off, and that is like I just kind of wanted to see maybe where it's going. It could change a lot, but yeah, that could be part of the reason why they removed it. And if you're not familiar, this is called JCell. It's a REPL, which is a read, evaluate, print loop. So here, like it will read in like a command I put in here, print, evaluate it. In this case, it gave an error, and then print out the result of it, and then it will loop back to the start of it to where you can do something else. And so this is a great way, in this example of what I just showed with Bruce came up, of maybe experimenting or testing certain things out with Java. And it was added back in JDK 9, but it's a really cool little command line tool.
Is it possible to write a script and just run it in JShell?
I think you could, but actually one other thing though that actually makes scripting a lot easier is that you can actually do single application or single source file application. And that's actually what I'm working on here. So pretty much right now, so the simple Java stuff I do, which it's a 1 minute video I post to YouTube every Monday. And so I need to go ahead, and as you can see here, like I have a bunch of file structure, and because I've just been really kind of silly and lazy, I have just been doing this all manually for a long time, and that causes like a lot of corruption issues to show up. So I'm putting together a utility here to kind of handle that for me. But like I'm terrible when it comes to bash scripting. Like I just know Java at this point anymore. So I'm putting together a single file application for it, and I can CD into that. Simple Java utilities, source, main, Java. I mean, right now it's not going to do anything, or I guess it's going to try to ask for some things from me. But if I do Java SIP utilities, like it can run just like that. So this is a good way if you're like me and you're not really good when it comes to scripting or bash scripting or something, how you could write like a little command line utility in Java pretty easily now.
I'm thinking that would be good for a build file.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's a lot of uses, like you say, could vary, obviously spin, like, when you do this, like underline it, the Java runtime, it's going to, compile this code and spin up a JVM. So it's not going to be as fast as like scripting or anything like that. So you're not going to maybe have the performance, but if it's necessary. But yeah, it could be used for a build file, or it could be used for many purposes.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any others come up. So generally at this point, when we meet in person, there's usually a big round of applause. So I'm going to clap.
Thank you.
It's kind of hard for the other people to do it. I think they may be muted right now.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
Well,
so I'm going to see if I can end this recording here. Yeah, I see some hands going up. All right.
Yeah, there. Yeah. Well, thank